Thomas had spent most of the next day, working on the main line with Gordon, Henry and James in helping them with their heavy express trains. Later that evening, he took some coal trucks to the docks and then some shunting before he went to take a group of workmen to the viaduct, which was in needs of inspection. The little blue engine was now feeling tired and worn out. He then headed into a siding where he had to let James pass through with the express. The night was clear with a full moon. Soon, Thomas was out of the siding and turned off the main line, heading back on the branch line. But as he got closer to home, the fog came down, very thick and heavy. The driver and fireman found it very hard to see from the cab windows or even by looking out. Then at the Bloom a much thicker layer of fog flooded in and totally blinded Thomas and his crew. With quick thinking, the driver slowed him down and brought him to stand still.
"We'll wait here until the fog clears."
"Good idea."
Thomas agreed as well. But only after a few minutes, he and his crew could hear the sounds of another engine approaching. But the fog was just so thick that he couldn't tell whether it was coming from behind or in front of him. Then he heard its whistle, followed by an echoing voice lurking in the darkness. At first, Thomas felt very afraid and tensed, but he managed to put on a brave face as the sound got louder and louder. Thomas closed his eyes and then said in the bravest way as possible,
"Come on out and show yourself, you don't scare me."
Thomas slowly reopened his eyes and looked ahead of him. And there he was. The ghost of Timothy. Standing a few inches from his buffers, staring evilly at him. Thomas driver and fireman could see him too and felt his icy cold presence, but they along with the blue tank engine did not back down.
"Hello, Thomas."
"So the rumors and stories about you are true. You are for real."
"Ah, so you have heard of me. But you've forgotten or perhaps chosen to forget that I was the one who led the way for you and your brothers and sisters. I was the first of our kind to become the best, but no, I wasn't. You soon came into being and took that place."
"I was way too young to even know you. Besides, we never spoke nor were we friends. So how can you say all that? All I know of you is that you were kept lonely but always smiled to everyone. But I guess you never like that in the inside. Were you? The last time I was told about you is that you went to Sodor and that was it. You became nothing more but a forgotten memory. But Timothy, you do know that I'm last of my surviving brothers and sisters. I still live because I am important to people. I was special and had the pride of a tank engine. Something that you once had before you became this evil and twisted freak of machinery, a dark side of a near mirror image of my very self. I carry the memories of that fact that my own kind was mostly wiped out and I was the only one to survive. That scarred me for life. I lost everything. The feelings of love that me and my brothers and sisters had for each other as a family. It was all destroyed. I've hidden all this away, but until now, with you doing all this haunting and terrifying the branch line and now at last seeing you in person, has brought all of those memories back."
"That's right. All the memories you wanted to forget, all the feelings you didn't want to accept. You have to remember me. Let's suffer together. Suffer with me."
"No. I won't allow you to. My friends told me all about your past. You killed yourself for nothing. All for nothing, and you wasted yourself. The truth of your demise is just that, or was it the fact that you somehow grew tired of yourself and decided to end your life that way?"
"Shut up. Shut up. You don't know anything. You don't know the real truth. That was not everything. That wasn't the end. Don't think you know what happened just because you heard about my haunting past, Thomas. You don't know my suffering. You don't know sorrow. You don't know the faces that trembled in fear, even though they were innocent lives that met a cruel end to their lives. The terrifying pleading from my diver, telling me not to go over the cliff, the passengers who went with me, the men, women, and children, they all died with me. The negative emotions I had boiling up inside me and my own self forced all that suffering onto me. All that hate, pain, sadness and that suffering. Yet I have to continue and live with it. So yet how can you say that you think and pretend to feel all those terrible things I did and understand me at all?
I can tell you're in pain and in deep suffering, and I want to know the real reasoning of all this, Timothy. What made you go to such tragic lengths to do what you did? None of my brothers or sisters of the E2 class ever did this. Tell me, Timothy, what caused you to kill yourself? Tell me.
Thomas, the truth of my demise will never be known by those who are told, for I took that with me, along with my victims, but all of them, except one, were unfortunate.
All but one? You were saying you had an enemy who hated you.
You see, I was only a prototype for you, the rest of the class of the E2 class, when we were introduced in 1913. I was used a lot and showed that we could be useful and be reliable. I, on the other hand, was to never have the service life that you and the other had. But I was wrong. I was kept with the London, Brighton and South Coast Railway and got to pull passenger trains and do freight work. But for most of my life, I was mainly doing nothing. But even if did little work, I still considered it to be a big deal and worth doing. You and I never met much and barely spoke, but we would exchange whistle salutes as we passed by. Towards the end of 1913, I was put to the side and retired. But that was short-lived and I was handed over to Sodor to help with the railway's growth. But I was in terrible shape, and due to being used so long, my parts were worn and at times was difficult to repair. But what was worst of all, was the way I was treated by the old controller of the railway. Throughout 1914, before the outbreak of World War I was treated badly by people who did not know to drive us engines properly. But that was because the controller assigned them to do that, to make them look like professional crew members. I never had any accidents while this happened, but I was so angry and embarrassed that I rapidly lost my pride and faith in who I was. Even though I smiled at other people who loved steam engines, I carried with me the shame and former shell of my former self within me, and I went into deep depression. Around early 1914, I was scolded and looked down by the old controller. The fact was that he never really understood how to run railways and was only into money and greed. He later told me that after I was to take a night passenger train, I was going to be withdrawn and later sold for scrap, mainly due to my parts being so old and overused a lot and not getting enough repairs done correctly. At this point, I was so upset and enraged, my pain burning out of control, and started to plot my revenge against the controller. I didn't know it until I left, but he was on board the coaches, along with other passengers. Deep down, I knew what I going to do. And it would cost me a heavy price. As I neared the station on my journey, my driver applied the brakes, but they failed and I sped up, going faster and faster. I refused to listen to my driver's plea to stop, and after I got turned onto the wrong track and saw that I was heading towards a cliff, I gave in to my hatred and pain and shouted out my last words of cursing and fell to my death, taking every soul with me, including the old controller, who mostly made my life a living hell.
So, that's it. That's reason why all this has happened since. You wanted revenge on the old controller who once ruled this railway for treated you like the way he did. In the end, you got your revenge, but it cost you your own life and all those people. I understand it. I understand the pain and rage you had to suffer from. But surely deep down, you had it to regret what you did in shame and remorse. Those other people didn't deserve to die, and neither did your crew. It's time you put all of this to an end and move on, Timothy. It's not worth being in this state of evil that you've been in for all these decades.
No. No.
I won't rest, nor will I move, Ontario. Once I'm done with you, I will be sending you and your crew down into eternal damnation with Maine.
Thomas suddenly realized that he had been fooled with, and the evil dark side of Timothy was back. There was only one way to end this all. Defeat the evil side of a once prototype engine of his own kind.
Timothy, you're being controlled by inner demons. Fight them off, break free.
You can't stop me. I will send you to hell. What? But how? No, damn you. Damn you, Thomas.